What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of What the
Chill
Podcast.
for you, baby.
We got Ed back with the muscle shirts. He
Come
put
on,
away the hoodie because he's getting ready to leave Florida. So he has to enjoy the sunshine as much as he can.
Come on.
We do want to let you guys know that this week is a pre-recorded podcast. We did have some things come up, and so we're actually filming on Monday, and you guys are going to see this on Tuesday. Our guest has informed us that if you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask him, to send him a message on Instagram. At the end of the podcast, we will provide his Instagram handle so that you can message him. And he has seemed pretty willing to respond to any and all responses, as he is a teacher, and teachers like answering questions.
Good dude.
I say that as a teacher who doesn't like to answer questions, but regardless. So yeah, Ed, I don't know if you want to give an introduction because I really don't know much about him, man. Honestly.
I mean, honestly, I don't know either. I did a little. I seen that he has, quite a little stack of, a lot of education and stuff, which is kind of like, obviously, everyone knows that, I teeter-totter on the hobbyist to the conservation side because I got my degree and stuff. So I'm kind of eager to learn about his background and how he got to it, because you got people from all facets that we've had, whether it be from education or just from just knowledge and just just loving the animals in general and just keeping them. So I'm excited to see what kind of what opened up his heart and mind, and just to just pursue it more in depth, I guess, and you want to say, and especially obviously from the teaching route. I mean, you not only go for the education route, but I mean, my wife's a teacher, and I know it takes and you're a teacher, so it takes a lot more something in here to be able to actually want to actually make a difference in other people's lives, from what you love. So that's.
I think we're on like a little journey of teachers that work with turtles, bro. I mean, last week's guest was a great one who's a former teacher. And now,
phenomenal, man. If you guys didn't see that, you better go back.
I think I'm using the wrong terminology. See, college teachers prefer to be called professors, but you're still teachers, okay? All right?
Educators.
Educators. That's the universal term. Educators. Guys, this was actually a what's the word I was looking for? Viewer requested guest. I asked the viewers a while back who were some guests that they wanted to see, and you guys requested this individual. So without further ado, let's go ahead and add Mr. or Dr. Grover Brown.
Oh man, dude, I didn't know he was
Brown to the screen. All right, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for the introduction.
Hey, no problem, Doc.
Dude, you got to put Doc in the front of that, man. We got to go back. We got to restart this thing, man.
Oh, yeah. I have no idea how to do that. I might be a doctor, but I don't know anything about this kind of technology.
Hey, if I had a Ph.D., I'd put it on everything.
Dude, I put it on one of my shirts, man. One of my brand shirts, Ph.D., prayer, hard work, discipline, bro.
Well, I've been very fortunate, like you said, just very fortunate to be able to follow my passion to where I am now. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, we're excited to get to know, where that stemmed from, man. And, on a more deeper level, because, obviously it stems from just keeping and just being around the environment. But I mean, obviously you've well exceeded, just like me. I got 1 degree, but you've got.
I've only got 2 degrees. Listen, I've only got 2
degrees. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm not. Did you skip a master's? You just went bachelor's?
I did. I got really lucky. I found a funding source, and I got to bypass the master's. So I've got a BS and a PhD. So
you got a BS.
Exactly.
So Grover, typically what we like to do is when we get a guest on, we like to give them an opportunity to tell a little bit about themselves. Things that viewers might not know about you, and kind of how you got started. So can you go ahead and tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, I'm Grover, obviously. And I'm pretty sure I got my start as many of you guys did, in that when I was like a kid, one of my first earliest memories was my dad finding a box turtle in the backyard. Like, he was just mowing, and it's so vivid in my brain. He was mowing the backyard. He found a box turtle. He brought it inside, and my mind just exploded. And I've been thinking about turtles ever since. And I mean, it's just one of those things where there's a family portrait of all of us, like it's the whole family. And you know, it's like grandparents, aunts, uncles. I'm from a big southern family. I'm from Georgia, but I'm like in the front row, 4-year-old me with a box turtle sitting like this. So that box turtle made it into the family portrait, and so it's still like, you know, on all my aunt's mantles and whatnot. And so I was obsessed, and I think that, you know, we all kind of have those similar experiences where we're introduced to them. And I grew up, like I said, in Georgia. My grandfather and aunt, they thought it was hilarious, you know, they like turtles so much. And so back then, because, you know, I'm going to date myself, box turtles were more abundant. And, you know, after a rainstorm, you could find them crossing the road. So they'd bring me box turtles as a kid. And I set up, like, my dad helped me set up a pen in the backyard. So it's, you know, a semi-wild enclosure. And I would literally spend, you know, my summers turning over every rock, every log in the yard, collecting beetles and grubs and worms. And I would hand feed these turtles. And I would keep them for years. In fact, I had some. They were all locally sourced eventually. I caught a few in my, I think we had some escapees and whatnot. But ultimately, I caught it in the neighborhood, and I had them for like 18 years. And I would, you know, just keep them outside. They would breed. They produce babies, and I release them out in my yard. And I ultimately, of course, moved off to college, and so it was kind of an awkward situation. Like, what do you do? And I knew much less about, you know, the ethics of it back then, but they were technically locally sourced from a neighborhood, so I let them go. And I will say that like 2 years ago, and granted, this all happened, I probably released them 12 years ago. 2 years ago, my mom sent me a photo from like a walk around the neighborhood, and she found one of my box turtles. Like, it's still out there doing its thing. So
I'm
I mean,
curious. How did she know it was one of yours? Or
no, she sent me a photo, and I mean, I kept this turtle for like 15 years, and so I have photos from like a digital camera I got when I was 14, and so it's definitely the same turtle. And she was an adult when I got her, and an adult when I released her, and she, you know, had not grown or aged noticeably at all when my mom found her too. And then I mean, I've kept musk turtles, I've kept a couple of tortoises. I never got too heavy into keeping turtles just because, like, I went off to college and it was hard to keep them. I snuck them in my dorm room, don't get me wrong, but I couldn't keep very many. Right. And so I went to the University of Georgia. I'm from Georgia, and I studied ecology. I know. Listen, we talked about this. I was too busy studying to get into college sports, so I was a nerd, and but I studied ecology. I graduated. I spent most of my summers working for Georgia DNR, so Department of Natural Resources, working with bog turtles. For several summers, I worked on the Georgia coast doing sea turtle work, and I did some undergraduate research with salamanders because it's, you know, kind of all that was available to me at the time. But yeah,
salamanders are pretty cool though, man.
Salamanders are pretty awesome. I don't know how colorful we can get with language on here, but I'll stick with awesome. One of my best friend in college, he was a salamander guy, and so we would, you know, go herping all the time. And
so, you know, I remember I told you before we started I wasn't like a big herper, but I specifically remember like 6th grade going into 7th grade, I was a Boy Scout, and we went to a camp, a Boy Scout camp in Georgia called Camp Thunder. And the only thing that I remember about the trip, other than the fact that there was no running water in the bathroom, was that there was a crap ton of salamanders. Like, I used to spend like the days just in the creeks pulling up rocks looking for salamanders. And I mean, like, that was awesome to me because where I'm at in Florida, like, I was in Orlando growing up as a kid. Like, I was like, a salamander, bro. I have to go to a reptile show to see a salamander. Like, and then I was in Georgia, and I was like, all right, I think I could stay here if they had.
Greg Brashear, who I think y'all had on your show before.
Yeah,
he told me the same thing. He grew up in Florida. And he's like, you know, we just didn't have salamanders here. And then, of course, Georgia, we're the Southern Appalachians. We've got this crazy diversity.
Yeah,
including some recently described species.
Do you guys red-spotted newts?
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've
I
got
know it's
news.
prevalent up in Ohio, and when I was in college, they were like everywhere.
They're harder to come across. I think they're locally abundant, but that red F stage though, where they're just
Oh,
bright orange, is and then to see what
fire,
an actual
baby.
adult looks like. It's they're a pretty cool one. They've got that unique life history of
I love the
starting
tiger
aquatic,
one.
going terrestrial, and then returning to an aquatic environment.
Yeah, spotted and the tiger. I mean, oh my gosh, going up in the mountains where I'm up there up north, man, love them.
Oh yeah. The spotted salamanders,
It's
tigers.
crazy how big, like you feel like a,
There we go.
I'm gonna say wet, slimy, big lizard, and it's like just a hunk of.
Yeah,
Golly,
I mean the
that's like,
tiger salamanders get like a foot long. They're
yeah,
insane. And then we have hellbenders in Georgia, which are those
dude, I would
massive.
love to see one of them, man.
When I worked with bog turtles, it was like a co-requisite. Like we did bog turtle work up until like July when the bogs got too overgrown with vegetation. And then we moved and did hellbender work for the remainder of the summer because it was so hot and the water was so low. So we caught hundreds every year.
Really?
And I mean, these things are just they're
just
ridiculous.
naturally all big, essentially. I mean,
we caught them all sizes, but I mean, we caught some that were like 2 feet long. I got my last day working with them. I had one latch onto my finger, and it would not let go. And I mean, their jaws are designed to like crush crayfish, and so like it's you know how like when a turtle bites you, they've got like a plate, but it's serrated, and like when a turtle bites you, like every pulse and like if it bit your finger, if your every heartbeat it bites down harder.
Yeah,
that's what the hellbender was doing, and so there was just blood running out of his mouth, but there was nothing. We couldn't pull it off. So
yeah.
I had this awesome like scar from
So,
afterwards.
Just because I'm really curious, what are the population and numbers like with them now? At least where you guys were at
in Georgia with hellbenders.
Yeah,
they're actually so. It's been a while since I've worked with them, but Northeast Georgia. We have the Chattahoochee National Forest, and we have and trout fishing is a really big pastime up there. So they actually invest a lot of money into like really maintaining these high quality, pristine habitats.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of stream miles, and our hellbenders are actually doing quite well. I don't know how they're doing comparatively to other populations, but we were catching hundreds every summer and pretty much at every site.
So they're not listed as threatened or anything like that, at least in Georgia, or
in Georgia it might, because they're still kind of like peripheral, they barely get into the state, they might still be listed, but I have to look that up. I think they are protected, but it's just because they're only in a few counties, but in those few counties that they occur in, they're doing pretty well. They're also supposed to be in the northwest corner, which is much more developed, like the northwest corner of the state, and they are not doing well there.
Really?
So it depends on where you are.
From pollution.
It's a lot of habitat. It's a lot of siltation. It fills in the bedrock or the big slabs that they live underneath, and so they fill up with sand, and it's just kind of habitat loss for them. There's a lot more agriculture over there, so you get runoff.
I'm a little bit more curious about your bog turtle research. I mean, that's an awesome turtle species.
It's one of the highlights of my life. They were incredible to work with. My good friend Teresa Stratman, she was doing her undergrad research on them as well as her graduate research on them, and I was just employed by Georgia DNR. And so for 3 summers of my undergrad, 2 summers I was paid, 1 summer I just volunteered. I got to go out to Georgia bogs, set these traps for them, and then we were marking and recapturing individuals to kind of get an idea of how our populations are doing. And then my last summer working up there, my friend Teresa, she had designed, she's so smart. She's way smarter than I am. She did a model that like looks at the landscape and picks out where other populations might be. And so we went to these other places where they could be and set out traps. And sure enough, we got hits. And so we discovered new populations there. In Georgia, we didn't know we had bog turtles until like 1980. And the only reason we discovered them was there were some wildlife biologists surveying for grouse, which are like those birds that like look like chickens. They were setting traps for grouse, and a bog turtle walked into it, and they were like, I guess we have bog turtles in the state. So really, it's only the past few decades that we've even known they existed. They're in these really isolated pockets. As you can imagine, they're very habitat specific. And unfortunately, a lot of those populations are on private property, and like the state government coming out to look for them. or try to manage them. So it was a lot of front porch sitting, but when you tell them that, like, eminent domain's not a thing anymore, we can't take your land, and you tell them how cute the turtles are, sometimes they kind of come around to it. So we had some really cool landowners who are really cooperative.
Is it similar habitat to like the spotted turtles?
Okay. So it's similar habitat to spotted turtles in the Northeast. Spotted turtles in Georgia, I actually collaborate with the Orion Society and Florida Fish and Wildlife on spotted turtle project. And spotted turtles in Georgia are only in the coastal plain, and they're in like these really like lowland floodplain pools that fill up periodically. So like when the river floods, they're in all these little pools, and bog turtles are up in the mountains. But then, like, I went to go visit a friend in Rhode Island, and spotted turtles, they're everywhere up there. They're really abundant, and the habitat's much more like the bog turtle habitat. It's these fens or wet fens and bogs, cranberry bogs, stuff like that. So at some point, they kind of like diverge in habitat as you're going down the Atlantic coast, and it's really kind of interesting.
You said you worked with Florida Fish and Wildlife. Does that seem to be pretty consistent for the small population in Florida too?
Yeah. So that's their habitat in Florida as well. Obviously, there's no contained bogs there. So they're in those river floodplains. Really, really tannic waters. It's kind of cool to like be in their habitat because this water is just black. It's like the Swanee River. It looks like tea, and you just see occasionally you might walk up on one of these dark puddles and you just see some yellow dots moving through it, and you can't even see the turtle. It's a surreal experience. I got to see a spotted turtle back in June in Georgia, and it was in a habitat just like that. It was a reclaimed rice plantation. So it had it was a rice plantation probably in the 1800s, early 1900s, but it's kind of grown back as a swamp and a cypress tupelo swamp. And she was just out about doing her thing in the middle of June. It had been really wet, so the puddle or the wetlands were still there, and it was awesome.
Well, that's awesome, man.
I mean, they're a really cool turtle, obviously.
So that's what pretty much sparked, your was that one other than the box turtle as far as research?
Oh yeah, I mean,
getting a little bit more in depth. I mean, was that something that kind of propelled you a little bit more to pursue a little bit more education wise and research?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it just kind of grew from there. Like I said, I just grew up a turtle nerd. All of my teachers knew that I was a turtle guy. They, show me pictures of the turtles and whatnot. In high school, like I had no idea that being a turtle biologist was a thing. I was, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, as most parents do, right? But I had this passion, and I was really fortunate enough. I had a zoology class in high school.
Yeah.
And the zoology teacher, just by sheer coincidence, had gotten his master's doing turtle work. And he's like, hey, we still, work on this project. Do you want to go to Michigan this summer to kind of see what we do? And I was like, oh, hell yeah. So the summer of my junior year of high school, I got to go to Michigan and work on this long-term marker capture study of Blanding's turtles and snappers and painted turtles. And when I saw that was an option, I was like, this is 100% what I want to do. Like, I want to work with turtles the rest of my days. And so, that really helped focus my interest. And I got to college, still kind of on that pre-med track. I had to kind of come out to my parents like, I don't think this is for me. And they really fought it at first, as most parents would, right? But then, I graduated. When I graduated, I actually moved to Vietnam, and I took a job working with a turtle, a non-government organization that specialized in turtle conservation, because that's arguably ground zero. We know that those Southeast Asian turtles are doing really poorly. And so I really wanted to go there as a conservationist, like you were talking about, Ed, just to see it, just to learn if I can help at all. And so I spent over a year in Vietnam working with Moromys anamensis, the Vietnamese pond turtle, which is pretty popular in the pet trade. It does really well, but it's almost extinct in the wild because it's only known from a few provinces in central Vietnam. So part of my job description was to go out, try to find these turtles, interview locals and see if they've seen them. And so I got this cool experience of getting to work abroad and actually see what conservation in a developing country looks like. It doesn't look good. And I certainly saw that, like, I worked with native staff. I worked with Vietnamese staff, and just to see the work that they did, it kind of surprised me at first. Like, they did a lot of field work, but they did so much education. And it made me realize that the education of the next generation is ultimately what's going to save those turtles over there. Because it's going to be, right now, the political situation is such that it's a gift culture. Like, you give these really rare and exquisite gifts to kind of move up the social hierarchy. But if you can foster this interest and this passion, kind of like I have and like you guys have, and the youth, they can change those policies. And unfortunately for me, I don't speak much Vietnamese. Even to this day, I speak very little Vietnamese, very hard language. And so that's where I kind of like, okay, I finished up my time there and decided I really want to pursue a graduate program in the Southeastern United States and kind of focus on my hometown, or home region turtles, because that's where I saw myself being able to do the most good. And kudos to those people who work abroad, because it's a struggle every single day. But I know that the organization that I left is in really good hands. They're still doing really good work. But to go in as a Westerner, there's only so much you can do. And so I decided, I haven't completely ruled out international turtle work, in my future. But for now, I want to focus on getting my education here, furthering it, and focusing again on turtles of the Southeast.
Yeah. Huh.
So yeah, and then I chose a graduate program in an area that's probably the most diverse in terms of turtles in the whole world, South Mississippi. And we have this incredible diversity, but very few people have done much work here. So there were a lot of avenues to pursue, a lot of research that you could do. And so it was just a really good opportunity at a really good time. So.
Can you explain what you mean by like the diversity in terms of why it's so diverse?
So Mississippi is pretty special. A lot of people, Mississippi is like dead last in a lot of things, like a lot of bad things, like education and, child pregnancy and obesity and this, that, and the other. But we are like almost number one in turtle diversity. Most of our diversity in Mississippi comes from the map turtles. So before, we started all this, you were talking about ringed map turtles.
Yeah.
So that's one of 9 map turtle species that we have in the state of Mississippi. So we have more map turtles than any other state, 2 of which are endemic. So they're only found in Mississippi. They're only found in the Pascagoula drainage. And so those are the yellow blotch sawbacks and the Pascagoula map turtles.
Okay.
But they are, like most graptomes, they're usually confined to like 1 or 2 river drainages. And Mississippi is very diverse hydrologically. So we have a lot of rivers and streams. So we have a lot of map turtle species. And from, say, the Pascagoula River, which is just to the west of the Alabama or Mobile River, which we were talking about, you have 2 map turtle species. But then literally you can drive 30 minutes west to the Pearl River, which is its own drainage, and you have 2 more species. And then once you hit the Mississippi Delta and you're like in the Mississippi River, you have 2 more species. And up in the northeast corner of the state, you've got the Tombigbee, which is 2 more species, and then the Tennessee, which is another species. So it's just incredible. We're second only to Alabama. Alabama, they also have incredible diversity of rivers and habitat, because they've got kind of the southern Appalachians coming down, and they've got endemics like the flattened musk turtle and stuff like that. So they do pretty well. We're just second to them. I think they have like 33 or 34 species. We have 31.
Wow. So for people that don't realize like how that you can have so many diversity with map turtles, like what distinguishes them all, what makes them separate and what makes them different?
That's a really good question. And so without getting too technical, map turtles are really, really aquatic. There's a few species that'll move over land, like the northern map turtle and like the Ouachita and Mississippi map turtles. They'll like move over land to nest and whatnot. But things like the Pascagoula map turtle and the yellow blotch sawback or the Pearl River map turtle, which is I think also popular in the pet trade, they're super aquatic. And when they nest on a river bank, and they don't go much further than that. And so what ends up happening is that you don't get any kind of genetic mixture from one drainage to the other. And so they're isolated in these river drainages and accrue, genetic differentiation just over time naturally. That's just how genetics works. And so eventually they accrue enough differences to actually speciate. And that's what you've seen in the map turtles because they are so highly aquatic that you don't have much gene flow from one river drainage to the next. And so you see endemism to that river drainage. Endemism meaning, they speciated there and they only occur there. So in Florida, y'all have the Barber's map turtle that's predominantly in the Apalachicola system. Yeah. There used to be a map turtle, I believe, in the Swanee system. It's extinct, but it looked like Barberite, except with an even bigger head, if you can imagine. And then the map turtles, another really interesting thing about them is usually they come in pairs. So you guys are kind of the exception in Florida, but here in the Pascagoula River system, we have 2 species. The Pearl has 2 species. The Mississippi has 2 species. Tombigbee 2 species.
What do you mean 2 species?
So each river has 2 species of map turtle. You have
like 2 separate species per river drainage.
So you have a megacephalic species, which means it has a big head. So those are like your Pearl River maps and your Pascagoula maps. And the females get those just jowls for crushing. I mean they're gorgeous. And so they have these huge heads for crushing bivalves, whereas their counterparts in those systems have really, really small heads. We call them microcephalics, and they feed like almost exclusively on freshwater sponges, which I, even as a biologist, had no idea existed. And so they're very specialized in their diet so that they don't really compete much with one another. And so that enables 2 species of graptomes to occur in each river system, which again kind of bolsters that diversity that we were talking about. So map turtles, they really drive turtle diversity here in the Southeastern United States. Musk turtles aren't far behind because they too are pretty, they're very highly aquatic. And so you see them speciate across similar drainages. And that was a lot of my dissertation research, was looking at those genetic differences across musk turtle populations.
I was going to also mention, for a while, people thought the Pascagoulas and the Pearl Rivers were one species, if I'm not mistaken.
They did, up until 2010. And it was actually my lab here at the University of Southern Mississippi who elevated the Pearl River map turtle to full species status. So they did some genetic research, looked into genetic divergence between those 2 groups in the Pearl and the Pascagoula. And we're like, oh, actually, they're more different. They're more distantly related than the ringed map turtle and the yellow blotch sawback. So they should probably be, elevated to full species status too. And it's, again, not unexpected given how many map turtles are, endemic to a singular river drainage.
Right.
But yeah, that drives Mississippi diversity. And even here in like the county that I live in, Forest County, Mississippi, I think we have 14 or 15 turtle species. So that's more than most countries. We have gopher tortoises and chicken turtles, and then we have map turtles.
Oh, really? You have gopher tortoises up there?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people forget that gopher tortoises, they actually make it their way into Mississippi and into Louisiana even. Granted, the Louisiana tortoises are not doing very well. Ours are all the tortoises west of Mobile basically are federally protected because the genetic diversity is really low, and so hatchling success is actually pretty low too. So we have federally protected populations. They aren't doing too hot, but you can still see them in the right habitat.
So what all kind of ones do you actually have you owned and do currently own as far as turtle species in general? Because I know I kind of took Cody's question because he likes to ask that. But
oh, does he?
So I didn't even think about it, bro.
Obviously, I'm a kind of sternid nerd. I love the mud and musk turtles. And they make really great pets. So
they do, man. Like, I don't care who you are.
They're way better and far easier and cheaper to maintain than radial sliders and map turtles. And so they make a great first turtle. And they have much lower UVB requirements because they are, a very aquatic turtle. They don't bask very often. So I keep predominantly mud and musk turtles. So I've got, I don't know the exact numbers, but I've got Eastern musk turtles or stink pots, and I've had one of them for over 15 years. I've got striped neck musk turtles, which I did my dissertation on, or they're one of the species I did my dissertation on. I've got razorback musk turtles. I've got a loggerhead musk turtle that Greg just gave me. I've also got Mississippi mud turtles. So down here, crawfish season is like a really big deal.
Yeah.
And Mississippi mud turtles often end up in crawfish shipments. So all my Mississippi mud turtles are rescues that were found in like grocery stores or before they went into the deep fryer. So I've got a few Mississippi mud turtles, and then
What's different about them?
What's that?
What's different about them, about their characteristics? And
the Mississippi mud turtle?
Uh-huh.
So they have they look a lot like striped mud turtles.
Okay.
They have two very well-defined stripes on the face, and they occur, from Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, even to here in Mississippi, and then Louisiana. But then you kind of see this transition towards the eastern mud turtle, which has that more dappled face. I don't think they're particularly common in the pet trade. I don't think I see many eastern mud turtles for sale that often.
No, that's why I asked. I was like,
but they don't have the stripes on the face.
Huh.
So Mississippi mud turtles, they just look a lot like striped mud turtles. And they can often be confused.
Same size, same everything.
Same size, same everything. Same sexual dimorphism even. So the females are larger in the Mississippi mud turtle, whereas in the eastern mud turtle, which is the same species technically, the males are larger. So it's interesting. Part of my research is I have an ongoing research project looking at some mud turtle genomics, so how they're related and how different species are related.
So do you actually observe a lot of your own, and to get like just other than fun? I mean, do you actually use them to actually observe and with your research, since you do a lot of research?
Yes and no. So two of my striped neck musk turtles I hatched out as part of a paternity study. So I have a population of turtles here in Hattiesburg in a really urban creek, and it's super easy. It's like right next to my house. I'll go and just catch turtles for fun. And so I collect a small genetic sample from them. And then I found a gravid female, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait till she oviposits to hatch the eggs and see if I can determine from the stream stretch if I can tell who the dad is. It's just like the Maury Povich show, like who's the daddy. We use very similar genetic techniques. So I used those two for that.
Did you figure it out?
I tried. I did not have the dad in my data set, so I was not able to find him. So he's still out there somewhere. So I still occasionally go out and sample that stream to see if, maybe one day I can find out who the daddy is.
So what do you mean take a sample of the genetic, like what you're talking about? What does that mean consist of?
So for me, a lot of turtle biologists, they'll take a tail tip. So they'll cut a small portion of the tail off. With musk turtles, I hate doing that. I don't ever do that because you're actually cutting through vertebrae. And they can bleed and it can get infected. What I do is I take a teeny tiny bit of tissue from the webbing on their back foot, really, really thin. It doesn't bleed. It doesn't impair their swimming ability at all. And I can get plenty of high quality DNA from that. And so I try to be as minimally invasive as I can. With the hatchlings, you know how they hatch with that kind of like umbilical scar or like that gooey stuff? When these two hatched, I just took a little bit of that and I got good DNA from it. So I didn't even have to cut them. And then
what do you use to take it off, and actually what do you preserve it with?
So you put it in ethanol. And if you're in a pinch, you can use Everclear. Same thing. It's high alcohol content. It preserves the tissue, keeps it from degrading. And then you use in the lab, you extract that DNA, and then we use what are known as microsatellite loci to run our genetic analyses. But I'm not a geneticist. I just happen to have a geneticist as an advisor. So a lot of my questions were geared towards genetics. But I love ecology. It's what I study for my undergrad degree. And so I've made a lot of observations just on my captive turtles that I have basically started research projects on. So musk turtles are called musk turtles because they of course smell really bad when you catch them, but they also use that for communication. So right now I'm working on kind of a study to see how they communicate with one another. I don't know if you've ever seen your musk turtles. They'll do this number here. If another turtle swims up, I'm pretty sure they're wafting pheromones from those musk glands towards the other turtle. And so they're using it
away type.
Like what?
like to like stay away or
not even stay away, just be like, oh, hi, this is who I am, like an identifier. Because if you think about it, I mean, you guys are lucky. Y'all have those Florida springs, which are just gorgeous. In Mississippi, you can't snorkel in most of our systems. It's too cloudy, too turbid. And if you can't see each other, how are you going to know? How are you going to find a mate? How are you going to, guard your territory other than, releasing these chemical pheromones?
Right.
And so that's
That's
something I've observed here in captivity that I'm like, there's probably something there, and there's not much in the scientific literature about it. So it's another great reason, to keep turtles. So making these little observations.
So a lot of the stuff that you do is more independent, and then you can benefit from, being a teacher, and you can actually use the labs and stuff and actually build something upon that.
Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of them are, ideas that I've come up with over time just through observations. I mean, that's a scientific method, right? Is you make an observation, you form a hypothesis. I just taught my kids all this. They had a practical on it today. And so having captive animals, you can make. What's that?
I said you're teaching that in college, and I'm teaching it in 4th grade.
Exactly. Oh man, listen, it's still some of these kids' first exposure to it. Like I said, Mississippi, we're 50th in a lot of things, and education is one of them. Bless their hearts. But yeah, so I do make some of these observations. A lot of the projects I do are collaborative, so I wouldn't say it's independent research. And right now I'm teaching at a community college, and so I'm doing less turtle work. But I'm still trying to get my kids, like, I'll use a bunch of turtle examples and try to get them real world examples. Cause, there's this misconception that someone with a PhD knows anything. We just know a lot about a very, small amount of material. So most of my examples in class are turtle examples because I don't know anything else.
I'm a little curious. You said your dissertation about the striped neck musk turtle. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you chose the striped neck musk turtle? Besides the fact that it's gorgeous.
Right. So I'm from Northwest Georgia. I'm very partial to our striped neck musk turtles out there. They're just these gorgeous turtles. They're abundant in the right habitat. And I love them because not only are they, like you said, a really cool turtle, but their habitat is just absolutely stunning. So they're these really clear streams up in the mountains. And if you can find a really nice intact one, it's just walking up it is so like therapeutic. And then you just come up on this turtle with a massive head eating some snail. There's just something about that. And so I was hooked from the moment that I saw these turtles. And I think are y'all familiar with county records? You can actually publish these things called county records if you find a species in a county for the first time. And so I found striped neck musk turtles in my home county. I was the first person to document them. So I had a county record. And so I was like, this is a really cool turtle. And so I started reading more about them and realizing there's actually very little research that's focused on them. They used to be the same species as loggerhead musk turtles. Right. And so most of the research on them was actually on, the Florida populations and springs. Whereas striped necks, virtually nothing had been done. And what I didn't realize when I started my position here in Mississippi is that they actually extend all the way through South Mississippi, all the way to a parish in Louisiana. And the habitat here is so fundamentally different from what I am used to in North Georgia. I was just like, where the hell are these things? What do they do here? Because not only do we have striped neck musk turtles here, we also have razorback musk turtles here. My dissertation was looking at the Pascagoula drainage, which is it's like really the only place where the two species co-occur, and they're doing the same thing and the same environment essentially. And going back to biology class,
right?
What's that?
There's a size difference between the razorbacks and the striped
neck.
Is.
There certainly is. But fundamentally, they're both a riverine musk turtle. And if you think back to your biology class of that principle of competitive exclusion, if you have two species in the same environment doing the same thing, one's going to drive the other to extinction. They cannot coexist. And when you look at striped neck musk turtles and razorback musk turtles, where they don't co-occur, I mean, they're in headwater streams, they're down in the bayous, they occur in every available riverine or stream habitat. But here in South Mississippi, it's the only place where the two actually overlap narrowly. It's at the easternmost extent of the Razorbacks range and the westernmost extent of the striped necks range. So I was like, how are they able to co-occur? Do they, actually, are they in the same stretches of river? And do they reproduce with each other? Like, are they hybridizing these areas? Yeah. And so one chapter of my dissertation was investigating this interaction, which I thought was super neat. And what I found is that striped neck musk turtles live in really small streams here. So they're in the really small, clear, and sandy and gravelly streams, where the razorback, like you said, is a larger turtle, and it's in the larger river systems. So they segregate out in habitat. But there's this really cool Goldilocks effect, where if the stream is just the right size, it's just big enough for razorbacks and just small enough for striped neck musk turtles. So there are places you can catch both species. And in one of those places, I did find a hybrid. So they do have the potential to hybridize naturally in the wild, which is super cool. And now, so there
some hybrid like stink pots and razorbacks. I've seen some hybrid. What I see, I think I saw loggerheads and stink pots. I think most of the hybrids I see are stink pots and something else.
And that's probably because stink pots are so popular in the pet trade.
Yeah.
With carinatus or with razorbacks and the stink pots, they're actually sister taxa. They're pretty closely related. Okay. A lot of people think that razorback musk turtles are more closely related to things like the loggerhead and striped neck based on similarity of appearance. But it seems to be driven by similar habitat preferences. So it's just the riverine form of musk turtle. And so razorbacks are more closely related to stink pots than they are the other group. Yet they can still hybridize with them.
So what do these hybrids look like? Are the hybrid you found like?
Oh man, I think I posted it to my Instagram. If not, I'll have to post it sometime soon. It's really cool. I caught this turtle and I knew straight away. Like there was absolutely no doubt in my mind. I was like, this is a hybrid because it had intermediate characteristics of each. You know how razorbacks, they have the spotting on the face. Well, the spotting was aligned in stripes on the throat, and the shell had a slight keel to it, so like a razorback, but not like a really prominent keel. And it was and it had very similar plastron to razorbacks, so it lacked that gular scoot up here, and it was really, really cool to find. And like I said, it was in just the right habitat. I'd found both species there before. And then when I took its tissue back to the lab, looked at the genetics, it came out 50-50. So the dad was a razorback musk turtle and the mom was a striped neck, which makes sense because here in the Pascagoula, at least, they have this weird reverse sexual dimorphism where razorbacks, the males are the larger sex, and in striped necks, the females are the larger sex. And so it makes more sense for, a large striped neck and a small razorback male, which are going to be similar in size to do the dirty to produce a hybrid, than like a really, really tiny striped neck male trying to mount a really large razorback female. But not to get too far down that wormhole of research, but it's just kind of cool to see these two in the same habitats.
Yeah. Do you see any, I would say benefit is the right word to the intergrades and qualities? And
no, absolutely not.
I mean, is it just like a phenomenon that it is what it is, and just kind of let them?
It is. I think there's a lot that precludes them and prevents them from hybridizing, and I don't think the hybrids do well. And I think that because out of, I think 700 musk turtles that I got, only one was a hybrid. So they're very, very rare, which should tell you that they don't. They have some disadvantage. And I think, like we were talking about with musk turtles and pheromones, I think that there's a mismatch there. I think it's going to be very rare that they're going to want to interbreed because they aren't going to recognize each other as, a conspecific of someone of the same species. So I think there's going to be an aversion,
like they can't communicate with the striped necks, and they can't communicate.
Yeah, exactly. They're speaking different languages, essentially. It might be the easiest way to put it.
Interesting.
And so, of course, there's rape and stuff like that, and that's probably how this happened. But we don't.
And male turtles are horny, man.
Right, exactly.
I,
And so that's how this happened. Is
like male dogs.
yeah.
So you still have that specimen, or
no? And I kick myself. I've gone back to try to find her because I was actually the study that I was doing. I had to release her because it was an occupancy study, so I needed to be able to say whether or not I could detect her again as part of the study. And so I released her. I've been back multiple times, set traps in the same places. I cannot find her, but I'm gonna keep trying because she's
what kind
definitely.
Of traps you said? What kind of traps? What do your traps look like?
I'm gonna. Is it okay if I don't answer that question?
Yeah, that's totally okay.
Because I don't want to give away too much. Musk turtles right now are being heavily trafficked, and so they're very near and dear to my heart. So I don't really want to say how it is that I catch them.
Oh, totally fine. I know most of it's hand catch and stuff like that, but
I've caught. Listen, so much of my dissertation work was just me going out for fun and catching turtles by hand. So I supplemented my sample.
That's the one thing about mud turtles and musk turtles. It's not like you have to worry about a slide or something, boom, like going off for a map turtle. It's like they're right there. I mean,
and usually they just kind of look up at you. And like, does he see me?
Yeah,
and you just kind of go like this, and they are. And they're abundant too. You can get really good sample sizes with them in the right areas. So I've been really lucky. Some of my favorite places to find them were like Oklahoma and Arkansas, up in the mountains, and these really clear streams, where they were like the razorback musk turtles up there. They were huge, had these huge heads, and they were as abundant as loggerhead musk turtles down in Florida. Like they were just everywhere. You would look at the stream, and the bottom was just moving with razorback musk turtles. It was so cool.
That's how it is right down the road for me. I mean, literally down. You get one single pond where it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drainages going into it, and it's literally you can walk around the whole entire pond, and it's literally like they're just scattered all the way up the bank of all different colors of all different sizes of head. I mean, I found a female that was all blonde, and it's like
I'm so jealous. I have to work really hard here. I actually have to work really hard to find musk turtles here. Because a lot of our stream systems have a lot of tannin, so they're really dark. They look like tea, and not only that, it rains a shit ton here, so the water just gets super cloudy on the reg, and so it's hard to just go out and find them. The weather conditions have to be just right, water conditions have to be just right. Whereas I feel like in Florida, everything's spring fed, and it's always going to be clear. And I'm so jealous that y'all can just go out anytime you want to find them.
Ed, were those musks or muds that you're finding down there?
Those are actually the 3-lined.
The 3-star. Okay, those are gorgeous, man.
Man,
those are the 3-lined. I mean, dude, literally. I mean, it was almost like like it was insane. Like, and it was every time because I actually my last job was I was a aquatic biologist. I was a regional biologist for
cool.
For the Treasure Coast. So I was literally every single day I went out on the pond and the lakes, and I pretty much, maintained the lakes, and literally that was part of my job. And like, I got to cover every inch of every pond of from 1 acre to 20 acres. And it was like, this is a job. Like, it's like not, it's like, so
striped mud turtles. They're some of my favorites.
Oh, dude. Yeah. And it's crazy. Just like you said, like the diversity, even like, how different they look and even sizes, and it's just like, but it's so awesome. Like I think even we're big on terrapins, we're big on a bunch of other turtles, but like I think that's why that's so near and dear to my heart. Between my pair I have a musk and pair of muds is because like you said, they look up at you, and it's just they got those eyes that they're just like big head. It's like they look at you, and it's like you can almost like, okay, I almost know you. Like I feel like I know you.
They're really inquisitive and they're really outgoing if you keep them for a while. So what kind of mud turtles do you have? Do you have striped muds?
I got the 3. Oh, I got the 3 lines. Yeah, and then I got the 2 musks.
Okay.
My males like actually came from up north of Florida. He's very small compared to my female, but my female's like, 12 years old, but like he's so tiny and he's really blonde. And he's like so like I don't know. It's like
stink pot or mud?
Stink pot. The stink
pot is blonde.
Yeah, he's like a blonde underneath, and he's just like he's like really docile, but he's so small, and it's almost like he's full grown, I think. But he's like
so I have one in the tank behind me, that's probably 2.5 inches, and he is full grown male.
Yeah.
There's some weird trait where there's like some dwarfism or something, and I think I've seen them for sale, right? The small,
yeah.
What are they called?
There's a guy that's selling them out of Florida. I think he's calling them dwarf stink pots or something like that.
Yeah, it's totally a thing. And the thing is, it's so cool.
People were hard down arguing with him too, and I'm like, nah, bro. I've seen dwarf stink pots.
Exactly. That's one thing that like a lot of biologists don't take full advantage of, is that in the keeping community, or people are in the community of keepers, y'all have so much knowledge of these regional morphs that really exist, like these dwarfs. You see it in loggerheads, you see it in stink pots. And so I've had so many conversations again with Greg where he's telling me about what he sees in captivity. And I see that in the wild, and it's like, oh, this is a natural phenomenon. And no one's published on it because they don't know a thing about it, because they don't keep these species and they don't know them as intimately as keepers.
Yeah, and I think didn't we touch on that, Cody, with someone in the past on a podcast about, there's a difference between like, seeing them kept and then almost knowing exactly from their way their behavior is to like taking that out in the field and almost at pinpoint. I think it was Greg maybe that how
it
you
probably
can find
was.
them.
It sounds like
seeing how pinpoint you can see them
just from seeing like snappers actually.
Yeah, in the captivity, and seeing that setting and taking advantage of that, because a lot of people, if you're in the field of just like doing the research, but you're not actually a hobbyist also on the side, it can be a little bit daunting because you're going out with all this data, but you almost need to know the animal almost in and of itself as well,
And I think I've really benefited from keeping these turtles, like we kind of talked about earlier, and that there's observations I can make on a daily basis that I'm like, I wonder if that's something that I could document, in a wild population.
Mm-hmm.
And then things like this dwarf stink pot, that's, it is a fully mature
dude,
male.
I'm telling you,
honking tail, could go out and breed with my 15-year-old female, but he is this big. And I find those here in South Mississippi. I'll find females who are maybe 3 inches who are sexually mature. And I'll catch males that are even smaller than that are sexually mature.
Yeah, my female is 4 inches and he is tiny, but I'm like, dude, you are not a baby.
No.
He's so small. And I'm like,
I have a slight speculation, Grover, and hear me out. All right. I'm theorizing, and I'm probably not the first person to theorize this. I think the northern populations of stink pots are bigger because of the cold, man.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. It's probably
like, a lot female, and I'm sure just like yours, Ed, I can guarantee.
Ohio. Yeah, I caught her in Ohio from pond.
Came from a pet land or a pet supermarket. Okay. She is all of like a solid ginormous. And then I have a female that I know for sure came from a guy in Louisiana, and she is this big, and my male is this big. I've only seen one male. I've owned 3 different male stink pots, and I've only had one male that was the same size as her. And I'm like, this male is not from like the South, man. This thing was massive. Like I almost thought it was a razorback, the size of it.
And I think, and so you're kind of touching what I think is another contributing factor here, is that here in the South, we have other musk turtle species. We have loggerhead musk turtles. We have eastern musk turtles, Florida mud turtles. We have striped mud turtles. And so there's more competition. Whereas as soon as you get above like Tennessee, and eventually mud turtles drop out, it's only musk turtles. So they can live their best lives and grow to, astronomical proportions. I've seen some like on iNaturalist. I'm just like, it's like a 6-inch long eastern musk turtle. But there's no razorbacks there. There's no striped necks there. There's no loggerheads there. So they can just go ahead and capitalize on all those resources. Right. So it's kind of this competitive release, but I think they also need to be bigger and hardier to get through those winters.
Yeah, definitely. Because my female is about 4+. I mean, she's honking in heavyweight, man. She's heavy as opposed to just lightweight. Down here, because I don't know, it's just a little bit more slimmer tone down here. I feel like it's just like they're always on the move and they're always active. It's almost so it's like they don't have to just be like waddling around up north, where they can just take their time, like you said, and just eat and just get ready for the seasons.
And they live a really long time too. I think the longevity record for a stink pot is like 56 years. And that's only because how many people have been keeping stink pots that long.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Mine is hardy, bro. When I tell you, she went to college with me. Her aquarium got shattered during a house party. Like crazy stuff. There was a period of time when I was like 14 where I like I was like, this turtle's boring, and I just stopped feeding her. Like, I was a terrible owner. She didn't have a UVB or a heat lamp until probably like 6 years ago. And I mean, I'm sure it probably stunted her growth, but you'd never know now. She's like the size of a rock. Like,
and I bet she's got really smooth growth still.
Yeah,
like,
man.
I'm sure she looks. That's
like
why they make such good pets.
Dude, that's what
such good pets.
Yeah, like I've literally, my female has escaped, I don't even know, a dozen times. Like, and I put boots, mesh, everything on top of it, and she still somehow gets out of the enclosure, and she'll just find her way. They're so like they're a determined animal. Also,
and they're good climbers.
Yeah,
Have you
they're
seen
almost
them basking
smart.
in
Yeah,
the wild? They'll be like 8 feet above the water, shimmying up a pole, and you're like, "How are you doing this?"
I was gonna tell you. So I told you I've had 3 male musk turtles. The first one that was ginormous, I got him off Craigslist, and I'm pretty sure he came from up north. He got electrocuted. Yeah, I let him live with my mom, and she had a pond outside, and she kept a glass heater in it. The glass heater cracked, electrocuted all the fish and the turtle.
Oh shoot!
Yeah. So anybody that's watching, don't use glass heaters. Okay. So I was pretty bummed about that because at this point my female was at least 12. So I got another male. This male escaped in the middle of winter, climbed completely out of a 300-gallon stock tank, never to be seen again. When I tell you he scaled the walls, there is no other way he could have escaped. I don't have any predator problems. I keep diamondback terrapins outside. Like, I have no predator problems currently, knock on wood. Third male, I thought he escaped. I set him in my waterland tub with my box turtles for a second while I was cleaning his enclosure. He disappeared for 2 weeks. He had buried himself in the substrate. Okay. I was almost at the point where I was like, bro, I'm not keeping any more male stink pots. Like, it is what it is. I know you said you've talked to Greg. He's had a similar problem with male stink pots. He had one escape and get eaten by an alligator snapping turtle. He had one swim and get stuck in rocks. Like, and it's only been males.
That's so the vast majority of my musk turtles are females. So most of them I've hatched out. And I think I incubate them hot enough to where they're all females. So I literally only have the one male. He was a rescue from a second grade class who found the nest. The nest had been torn open. Okay. And he was like all bloody. The egg had broken, but he was like fully formed. And so they gave him to me, and I, kept him since, just because he's pretty cute. And I don't have a male. If I did want to, breed my female again, but he's the only male I have out of like all of my turtles.
Huh.
So I guess I don't really have much experience with male musk turtles because I keep so few of them.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is a problem I won't have.
Have you noticed any weird behaviors between your male to your female?
I keep them in different tanks because right now I'm not in a situation to hatch out any more eggs.
You're talking about just musk or muds too?
I mean,
my musk is timid, man. The male does not want to, I've seen maybe twice activity wise as a female, but she's 3 times the size of him. Now my 3-lined, I mean, he has a honking head. He's bigger than a female, and he's every time I go in there, dude.
Just begging for food.
No, I'm begging for her. He's always got her, man.
You remember those late night commercials when we were younger that'd come on? That's what he's about, man. It came on. What was that channel? Oh God, it was like the Man channel when we were growing up. That's what turtles on.
Very vague memories. I think. There was a TV. There was a channel. You're right. There totally was a channel. Was it Spike TV?
It was like a Spike TV, but it was like all man stuff. Like they'd play like 1,000 Ways to Die, and
yeah. It's coming back. I'll remember it by the end of this podcast.
So let's talk about your shirt, Turtles of the World. Where did that's from your research, or where did that come from?
No, so this is he is an artist in Denmark, and his name is Ferry. I don't know his last name. Ferry, but he's like Ferry Pelusios maybe on Instagram. But he's an incredible artist. He drew this and posted it, and I was like, I have to have one. So I had it shipped from Denmark. So I'm pretty sure it's the only peltifer shirt or striped neck mustard shirt in North America. So I'm very proud of it, and I definitely wore it for the podcast for a reason.
Okay.
I'm very proud of
So
it.
you don't go herping in it, right?
No, absolutely not. But I did defend my Ph.D. in it. I had it on. I had a button-up shirt on, but I had this shirt on underneath.
It was like,
luck.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm curious because you're talking to two guys that just had a podcast last week all about diamondback terrapins. Have you worked with the populations in Mississippi at all, or even in Georgia?
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
They
now
are
we're
my
getting
white
started.
whale in Mississippi. So whenever I move to a new place, I start my turtle list over. So I have seen every turtle species in Mississippi within her provincial borders, save for the diamondback terrapin. I found a dead one, I found a nest, but I've never seen a live diamondback terrapin in the state of Mississippi or like hatched diamondback
How was the
terrapin.
dead one? Was it just what was the scenario?
It was I don't know if it was mortality from a crab trap, but we just found the shell of an adult female.
Gotcha.
However, in Georgia, I did help a graduate student off of Jekyll Island. And I helped him in a marker capture study. And I looked forward to it every year. It's always Easter weekend. And we'd go out and we had these big seine nets that we'd pull through these tidal creeks. And we would catch, hundreds of them. And so he would mark, measure, and just collect data off of them to kind of look at the demographics to see if, down there, road mortality of females is a real big problem. The only area in the marsh that's above sea level is the roadside, and so they get careened. And so he was looking to see if it was a male bias population because females were being hit so frequently. But yeah, I've worked with the species in Georgia. I helped out for 3 or 4 years with that, and had my hands on a couple hundred of them. And they are one of the, we all know they're one of the most spectacular, most beautiful turtles in North America. And to see those females with the honking heads, and not only that, just the variability in color. Like you'll get a solid white one, with these concentric green and gray rings on the carapace, and then she's got some frecklings on the skin, to just the solid black individuals. And they're from the same population. And you're like, how can you have this much variability?
Right.
Yeah. And I think I posted one. I got to see a nesting female back in June when I was on the Georgia coast. I think I posted a video of her nesting on Instagram if y'all want to check that out. But a stunner of a female again.
So they've actually eluded you though over there, huh?
But they've eluded me. They've eluded me.
You've actually tried, right?
I have tried for years here. There's a pretty well-known nesting beach. Every time I've gone, all I've seen are tracks. And I'd love to see the ones here because they have we have the Mississippi. What's that?
I said that's why I was going to ask because I feel like in comparison to the Northerns and the Centratas, the Mississippis are like so little known about.
So little is known. And then
some guys, they're like, no, those are Texans. No, those are Mississippis. No, they're this.
And the females, their faces, they have those bulldog faces. Like it's just rounded. It's almost like a Barber's map turtle. Like their heads are so big.
Yeah.
It's just absurd and the obscene. And we all love those big headed turtles. I would love to see a Mississippi diamondback terrapin. I was so thankful to still be here, that I got a job in South Mississippi, because next nesting season, I'm going to be out there every day if I have to at 6 a.m. to see one of these.
Are there any people, in any institutions in there that are working with them? Like I've seen some guys in Alabama that are working with them. I've seen some in Louisiana. But
there used to be someone in Mississippi working on them. She transferred jobs to another branch. I forget which one. But she was monitoring the nesting beach. And so the problem with Mississippi is, one, we don't have much coastline, right? Our coast is pretty limited. And two, we have the longest man-made beach in the world, is what I'm told. And so we basically just threw some sand on top of beautiful, pristine marshes to create a beach for tourism. And so there's been a lot of habitat loss. And so we've lost, I think, or our populations have suffered from that. And I think there's only a handful of known nesting beaches here. So I think it's just there's been habitat degradation and habitat loss, and so our population is not quite as robust as some of those other populations you see on the Atlantic coast.
Now, do you see? Do you foresee? Because we were talking about laws, and how Florida started, with the, in the process of with the terrapins. Do you foresee, it streaming even to the coast in Louisiana, Mississippi? As far as isn't there a two? You're allowed two or something, and obviously talking about wild caught, but do you see anything kind of laws changing because of, or the population's pretty sustainable right now? Do you think, even though they
I'm
are
actually
elusive?
shamefully, I'm not as well versed as I should be on the laws for certain turtle species here. I was on an email chain not long ago talking about regulations with diamondback terrapins. I think even one of the state herpetologists wasn't too sure of the laws here.
I know Louisiana's open season, man. It's like they are very.
It's Louisiana's a sportsman's paradise, so that that's what all their license plates say. So that doesn't surprise me as much. Mississippi, our coast is actually pretty well developed. It's one of the richer areas of the state because of all the tourism and the casinos, and so there's less Cajun influence actually on the coast, and so I think that benefits some of our terrapin populations. It's not really the culture to go down there and to catch them. It's again one of those richer areas where everyone's got prime real estate and whatnot. So whereas Louisiana, there's a lot of very remote rural areas along the coast. Mississippi's not really that way.
Right.
Interesting.
So I don't know if that's helping our populations or not. They're not well studied. My permits the permits that I had to study turtles here, they only take me to I-10. I cannot sample anything south of I-10. I have to have DMR, Department of Marine Resources permits to do any work south of I-10. And so me and all the other turtle biologists in the state do not venture south of I-10, so we do not encounter terrapins very frequently. And to my knowledge, there's no one in the state, no graduate students or even biologists that I know that are working with them.
Wow, that's
a shame, man.
Yeah, because I mean they're super cool.
Yeah, you'd figure at least just their history alone stands out, and it's
and like you said, they're different subspecies. What do you know? Are they Pileata? No, that's not it. Yeah. Are they Pileata?
Yeah.
Okay.
They put the Pileata right around the Panhandle, around Pensacola area, and that, so they say, goes all the way down to Texas.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point in Texas, they claim to be the Texan subspecies.
Which is what? Do you know off the top of your head?
Littoralis.
Okay, that sounds right.
That's
I'm not as well versed.
Littoris or Littor.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. That's crazy, and it's crazy to see the different kind of cultures in each state and everything. And just like talking to Kathy, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, last week it was a total like a community outreach kind of big event where people like, pristine these animals, and it's like almost just encouraging to see like people banding together for a species, and she's such a. It was almost like living proof, like only one person can make it. It only takes one person to make a difference, just like everything you're doing in your research and all the other animals that you've worked with, and if no one else does it, then who is? So
and I'm very lucky to be able to do it too. So I certainly realize that. It's a lot of fun.
What species of box turtles do you guys have over there in Mississippi?
Oh man, it is a cluster. So we are at an area that is a zone of integration for 3 subspecies.
Okay.
So we have, even here in Hattiesburg, where I live, you have some that are textbook eastern box turtles, just look like they're from Georgia. But you have some that are textbook 3-toed. And then if you drive 20, 30 minutes south, you get the Gulf Coast variety. And so what I've noticed, and this is a project, again, one of the many project ideas I have that I hopefully will execute at some point in time. But we all know that those Gulf Coast box turtles are very aquatic. And so you see a lot of their morphology and their features, they travel up the river drainages. And so if I find a box turtle along the river here in Hattiesburg, even though I'm an hour from the coast, I can still see some features of Gulf Coast box turtles because there's still gene flow up and down the floodplains there. Versus when you get to the uplands, it's almost exclusively three-toed box turtles. And they look like the quintessential, the very typical light-colored carapace, brown, three toes on the back. That pea head, have y'all noticed that in three toes? Their heads are so small.
Yeah.
And it's just wimpy little things. I'm used to a nice robust head, like on an Eastern box turtle. And so I was like, some puny turtles here. But it is a mixed bag. It makes it fun because you never know what you're going to get. It's like you shuffle the cards, the genetics of any box turtle in the area, and you never know what you're going to get. But along the coast, we have our own flavor of Gulf Coast box turtle. They don't look like the Apalachicola ones that have the beautiful white heads, but these things are monsters.
Are they black?
I'm
sorry, I didn't hear you, man.
I didn't hear you. So you said,
are they the black variation of them?
Some are black, but a lot are that brown, like a three-toed. And so a recent paper came out that says that ours are actually genetically distinct from the Apalachicola variety. So they're their own little evolutionary unit. And they're characterized by kind of a browner carapace, but they're still huge. They're still flat. There's reports of them in the saltwater marshes chasing fiddler crabs and eating fiddler crabs. And so there's a graduate student on the coast who's working with them. And the thing is that they are so abundant, like incredibly abundant. He goes out on a morning jog and can find 15 to 20 of them. And just in people's yards. And these are really urban areas, really urban landscapes. And yet they still do fairly well. And then in the more natural landscapes, like the floodplains of the rivers, they're just everywhere. Versus for me in Hattiesburg, I'm lucky if I see one every month or so, It's just astronomical the numbers that they occur in. And they're like the size of a friggin' gopher tortoise. They're so cool.
They're massive compared to like I keep some Florida box turtles, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do Gulf Coast. And Greg was like, just be careful because there's a big size difference in those Gulf Coast males. If you end up with a male, they are relentless.
They're huge. They're huge. And there's some research, that shows that, they're so aquatic. They were radio tracking them into 8 feet of water. These things are semi-aquatic, it's just absurd. Wow. I'd love to see Florida box turtles though. I've never seen Florida box turtles.
Like in the wild, or like you've never seen
captivity in the wild. I've never seen one.
Oh man, you're gonna make me go get one out of.
I'd love to. I've never been south of Gainesville, so I might take a trip in December and try to go see some.
So I do get to see some every so often here. Well, I don't know if you know, we have like Payne's Prairie. Have you ever heard of Payne's Prairie?
I've been to Payne's Prairie.
Okay, so we have like Payne's Prairie. We have a good amount of woods here. We got the Ocala National Forest, a little south. But I'll say the ones that I see are never as bright as the ones that I see like people doing research down in South Florida in terms of like they are pretty insane. The ones I keep, I've purchased all of them from out of state. Just because I didn't want to risk the possibility that they were wild caught.
Yeah.
If you give me a second, or even when this ends, I'll grab the one that I think is the nicest for you.
Okay.
And give it to him?
Give it to him? No, not yet.
I can't keep it.
I know.
It's been a journey to build my box turtle group. So here in Florida, there's 4 species of turtles that have a limit. So it's the loggerhead musk turtles, diamondback terrapins, all of the Carolina box turtles, and then Escambia map turtles.
So no alligator snapping turtles aren't on there?
You can't keep.
You're not allowed.
Oh, gotcha.
No.
Those 4 species, you can keep 2 per person per household.
Gotcha.
So like I have multiple people in my household, which helps me. But I only have 4 box turtles. And so if I'm gonna be limited, like I'm gonna make sure they're the ones I want. It doesn't necessarily make sense for me to have an Eastern and a Florida and a 3-toed. So
yeah. Cool, man.
So typically at the end of our podcast, because we are towards the end, Unless you want me to bring the Florida box turtle while we're still recording. It's up to you, bro.
Well, we could say that to the end.
All right. So typically, as we wrap up our podcast, we like to give our guests a chance to provide a platform on how people can reach out to them, some work that's being done. If you're looking to get supported to do research, if you have merchandise that you want to sell, any of those things. So
like your shirt. I mean, you can put your shirt up for sale.
I'm not gonna sell the shirt. It's one of a kind.
For your research, man. Well, man, exactly. You don't have to wash it or anything.
All right. Smells like Grover. There's somebody out there that wants it, man.
I don't think they want this. No, I don't think they want this at all. Well, I mean, thanks for having me. I'm a pretty simple guy. I don't have any merch. I've got an Instagram page. If you like turtles, usually I post educational content. I just like to showcase how pretty our turtles are.
Right? I mean,
what's that?
It's only got like 10,000 followers or something, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just hit the 10K mark. I was pretty excited. People like turtles, as they should.
Yeah. And they like you.
I'm curious how you hit 10,000 followers without a YouTube.
And not even nonchalantly.
I mean, I've had that Instagram page for a long time. I had one video kind of go viral a few years ago, and that kind of gave me a spike in numbers. It's been just kind of slow, steady trickle.
What was it, if you remember?
It was a soft shell video. I didn't realize. I mean, I find soft shells all the time, but soft shells are pretty exotic to most people in the country and the world. And so there was a clip where I let one go. And it's like a 7-second clip, and of course, they're really fast, so it just took off. And it looked like, have you ever watched Plinko on like The Price is Right?
Yeah,
it looked like a Plinko chip just going off into the stream, and people ate it up. They made all these GIFs, all these memes, and so I had like Lad Bible when they were popular reaching out like, "Can we share your video?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I don't care." So anyway, it always got people would trace it back to me, and I think it got a few thousand that way.
What kind of soft shell?
It was just a Gulf Coast spiny. They're our local flavor. So it was a little male. I caught him when I was doing some trapping in Alabama. He just took off and people loved it. So,
yeah. I'll admit, soft shell turtles are not one of the turtles that I go crazy for, man. I got bit and.
Oh really?
That long neck bit me. I tried to save one crossing the road.
Yeah, they'll do that. And Florida soft shells will mess you up. They're huge.
Florida soft shell. And
exactly.
They're almost as aggressive as snapping turtles, man. Like
they're probably more aggressive. I mean, think of how vulnerable they are. That's their only line of defense because they got like no shell to protect them. Right. So they got to be super aggressive.
So like, I'm not afraid of them or anything, but I'm like I had a guy who was like, "Yeah, man, I got these albino soft shell turtles," and I was like, "Cool, you're still gonna have them because I have no interest."
Dude, I had a bunch of hatchlings of all different colors, and I just actually don't get me wrong. I know once they get bigger, it's gonna be a different story. But just seeing how cute they were and actually bury in the sand and stick their head up in the sand, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Just because
we've hatched them out in the lab just for fun. Like I found a nest and I was like, let's just throw these in the incubator. And I don't know if y'all can hear my dog scratching at the door.
What kind of incubator do you guys actually use?
So it's we did this just kind of my advisor had a huge environmental chamber. It's not even an incubator, but you can set like humidity and temperature to do like experiments with, but it wasn't being used. So we just tossed some eggs in there and cranked up the heat and they hatched. So
and it's pretty on point with the whole humidity and everything even.
Yeah. So we had to tape up a few of it has like these, I guess, holes for circulation or something, but we just taped those up. Put a whole bunch of water trays in there to bump up the humidity, and it worked like a charm. We've every spring when the females are out nesting, the local veterinary clinic will send us all the eggs that they get from females who have been hit, and so we'll pop those in an incubator and try to hatch them out and release those. So we've done that for box turtles, sliders, cooters. The soft shell, I found a nest and threw them in there. I've had Peltifer, or I've had striped neck mustard legs in there, razorback mustard legs in there. We just use it for fun.
Now, how do you dictate? Were you always putting stuff in there to control the humidity as well as the temp, or I mean, what made you also try to regulate the humidity along with the temperature?
I just want to make sure. So we did have some trouble the first year using it. It's a huge, it's like a huge refrigerator type thing.
Yeah.
And so the humidity was an issue. We had a lot of our box turtle eggs just withering.
Gotcha.
They would hatch, but the hatchlings would be so small because they lost so much water. So the next year we just put trays of water in there. We taped all the things up. It's supposed to regulate humidity, but I guess it probably doesn't. So we just made sure that we had really high humidity in there, and we usually kept it about 80 to keep that humidity and that moisture up. And we've had good success with it. We haven't had that issue anymore. We don't see eggs. What was it called? Denting or
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm going to speculate here, Ed. I think primarily the reason Ed was asking is because in one of the Diamondback Terrapin Facebook groups we're in, there was a discussion about like split scutes on turtles.
Okay.
And whether or not humidity or temperature plays a role in that in terms of incubating. So last week we had Kathy with Terrapin Nesting Project. She's up in Long Island, up north.
Okay.
And she was saying that they very rarely find split scute terrapins hatch. The ones that they do, it's typically when they take them out of the ground to incubate them artificially. And so I hatched some terrapins last year, and I had 3 hatches split scutes, but all 3 of them typically hatch from clutches where there was some variation in the humidity. My opinion is it's a lot has to do with humidity.
Okay.
But some people are saying temperature. They're saying like if the temperature is too high, then it causes split scute.
That's what I've heard. But I mean, I'm not. I don't have a foot really in the hobbyist. I don't breed many turtles, and so these eggs, they could have taken on some sort of damage just from the impact of a female being hit. I think we get some with split scutes, but not all that many. It's just a mixed bag. So I don't know too much about causes for it.
I guess my rebuttal to the temperature thing, for example, I don't know what other species of turtles, follow this rule, but typically, terrapins can be incubated for a certain gender. And so my terrapin that hatched with the worst split scutes was a male. So
it's going to be a lower temperature, probably.
Right. So when they were like extreme temperatures, I'm like, his incubator was set at 80 degrees. How is it, spike up?
And I mean, think of terrapin nest. I mean, they're in like sand sometimes.
Right.
Which is, I mean, I'm sure those nests get 90 degrees sometimes.
Right.
I'm sure that in the wild, they're subject to really high temperatures.
So for me, I guess, and again, I'm no wildlife biologist, humidity just made a lot more sense because it seems like the thing that's harder to control. Like Florida, the humidity is pretty much always high, so you don't have to worry about that. The temperature is pretty much going to be consistent, but when you try to artificially recreate it, what's the hardest thing to recreate out of humidity and temperature? It's the humidity. I mean, you got to worry about the condensation, water, water vapors and things. So, I mean, that was just me. Again, just total speculation here, but I think that's why he was asking about
the
humidity.
Well, unfortunately, y'all are going to have way more experience with that than I would. So.
No, man, you have different experiences that are probably more important. I mean, we don't know that much about musk turtles in the wild, and you just told us that you caught a hybrid. I mean, I'm sure. Ed, you ever had a hybrid turtle?
Nope.
I'm 0-0 for hybrid turtle.
No.
It's pretty cool they can hybridize naturally. So, I did reach out to people. I was reaching out to some pages on Instagram of breeders in China. And I kept asking them, like, have y'all ever bred peltifer or striped neck musk turtles with razorbacks? And just by coincidence, no one ever had. And I was like, I just kept hoping because they would post the hybrids that you would normally see, like striped neck musk turtles and odoratus, or stink pots and razorbacks, stink pots and loggerheads and razorbacks. But there was no, I couldn't find anyone who had done striped necks and razorbacks. So
there's a guy on Instagram in Alabama that does. I think he's doing striped necks and stink pots, and they look pretty incredible. I mean,
really? Will you send me? You'll have to send me his page because I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I'll send it over to you. He also gets pastel stink pots.
Oh man,
yeah, pretty incredible.
I've seen some of those. Those are gorgeous. And I've seen the albino razorbacks, which are just.
I just saw, what was it, a T+ albino stink pot today. I think I was scrolling Instagram at some point and saw it. That was pretty incredible too.
It's like, you know, I don't know. Like I feel like those like muds and musts, they almost carry the albinos like genes so much better than almost all the other like turtles. Like I don't know,
Really?
something about them. They just look way more spectacular. They carry that albino gene. Like it's like, you know, we can see albino a lot of different things, but it's just something about, you know, seeing that one little stink pot or whatever, I'll totally like albinoized. And it's like,
yeah,
dude, like you're cute already, let alone like being.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I like that albinoized.
Yeah. so can we just look up your name then on Instagram? Is it just
I guess I
Brown?
never actually said it. It's just at Grover Brown.
Okay,
pretty
cool.
simple. And like I said, I don't really have any merch. If you have any questions, I answer DMs pretty regularly. So don't be afraid to ask anything. So
cool.
Yeah, that's it for me.
At Grover Brown.
That's me.
Awesome.
Right. You can find him on Instagram at Grover Brown. It's been another great episode, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I've definitely learned a lot about musk turtles in particular.
That was my goal.
Come on.
Hey, we got to have a goal for everything. Guys, don't forget, this is a pre-recorded episode. Grover will be busy tomorrow when this airs, but you can send him questions. Ed and I should be popping in and out to answer any questions that you guys may have that we're able to answer. We appreciate you guys for watching, and we will see you again next week. You guys have a good night. This is What the
Chill
podcast. We'll see you guys next week.